Hi, thanks for choosing this video to watch. This is going to be an unusual one for this channel because usually I have no deadline when I start a project. I just work on it until it's successful and then I make a video. But this time there's a bit of a deadline and I'm stuck. So I wanted to make a video about where I am so far, and hopefully in the distant future I'll be able to make a part 2. Show you what it looks like when it's successful. This one's not successful yet, is how I'm going to say it. So it's a spring reverb. I have made one before based on this pattern.
This design just uses a piezoelectric wafer that's glued to a metal plate, which is attached with a wire to a spring. And then the same thing on the other end. So when you send a signal in through this side, it actually shakes this metal plate, and the sound moves back and forth along this spring to the other side, which goes.
But whereas this one uses actual physical vibrations to create the echo effect, the traditional spring reverb uses the manipulation of a magnetic field to twist the spring and create that effect.
This uses magnets that are attached to the spring.
And I'm really fascinated
by how
that works. So I've been doing research here. And that led me to approximating the design on my own.
And this here is a magnet which is attached to a spring.
So the rest of this video shows how I got here. And then at the end, I'll try to project where I'm going to go.
Here's some schematics from the drive circuits used to process the signals. So this is the in and the out for the tank, and this is the in and the out for the signal. They're basically the same. This one I didn't mount because by that point I was despairing that I wasn't doing it right. Both of these worked in the sense that they amplified a signal, but they seem to be overdriving the signal. So there's, in this circuitry here, something I need to change. So I've been looking at these, trying to figure out what it is I need to change. Also, there's more factors to consider. For example, how many laminations do I need? How many turns of the coil do I need? And also, what length of wire and what gauge of wire do I need? So, through experimentation and math, it became obvious that the more coils, the better. And winding them directly around the laminated steel didn't quite work because the ceramic coating cracked and it started conducting the signal through onto the flux. So that didn't quite work. And obviously I'm using a thinner gauge wire here. That just means I can get more coils around one piece of paper. But it all boils down to impedance. So how do you determine impedance? Well, in Tape Op magazine, I found an article by Scott Hammond, which basically defines impedance in a way that I can understand it, and then provides a formula for determining it. And why that's important is the drive circuit has a certain resistance, let's say, and the spring coil circuit has a resistance. They need to match, and that resistance is basically impedance. So I need to be able to determine how much resistance or impedance the spring has, so I can adjust how much I'm putting out from the drive circuit. So I can measure all of these elements I need to measure with the tools I have, except for inductance. And inductance has to do with this coil here. And it's basically the ratio of voltage to current. And when you change a current, you create voltage when you spin it around in a coil. And the way to measure inductance is to hook it up to basically a complicated piece of machinery that I don't have, a function generator. And I could create one, but we're running into another problem when I start creating test equipment, because I'm really just a beginner and I'm not quite sure if I'm good enough at making circuits to create one to test the ones that I've already created. So that's where I'm hitting my brick wall.
So most people would start out this project by doing all the math first and figuring out what they need to do and then creating the physical object. But I'm more comfortable crafting things, so most of this video is going to be watching me making things. For example, this little horseshoe magnet, based on the designs I've seen, when they talk about a laminated steel magnet, all I could figure out was to slice out little horseshoes of steel and stick them together with epoxy. And this gave me a great opportunity to use two of my favorite tools, the power shear and the plasma cutter. Here's the power shear. Yes!
The next question I have is, I don't know how many laminations do I need. I have 3 here. Do I need 3 more? I only have 1 more than that. I have 7. I don't know how much mass, how much iron I need when I wrap around the copper wire to form a transducer. So I'm gonna put these together and run a test, just using this one and this one, just to see what will happen. So Oi. That's hard. I need a tube. Where will I get a tube? I need a tube. There we go.
Okay. Yep, it's laminated. So next for winding the inductor.
So what I've done is, here's the laminated steel with the coil around it and the two leads. The way I've made this is I've just taken some heavy cardboard or heavy paper, and I wrapped it around this piece of wood. I got it wet and glued it, and soaked it in glue, then wrapped it around this piece of wood. So I have this little tube, and then I squashed it, and I just twisted this this magnet wire around it. So even though they call it magnet wire because it's got a thin insulating layer of plastic around it, but I just want to make sure there's no chance of it shorting out on this, because this is very sharp. So that's why I use the cardboard tube. And the next problem to solve is how am I gonna, I just need to connect an amplifier to one end to drive the sound through the spring, and an amplifier to the other end to take that signal and send it to the speaker or whatever, the mixer. So that's the next part.
The next thing to do is to suspend a magnet inside that field created by the coil. Here I'm displaying how I jammed two screw eyes into either end of a magnet so I could suspend it. But later I found a little magnet clasp for a necklace that worked a lot better. I just epoxied it together. So here you see how it's in between the legs of the flux, is what they call this laminated steel. And supposedly the signal will vibrate the spring, and on the other end the same thing will happen, only in reverse. The coil will act as a little microphone and send it through the amplifier and out to the mixer.
You can hear a kind of a reverb, but it's not remarkable. And I've been playing with the proximity of the magnet, because this is quite strong. Sometimes it gets stuck on the tines. But I think that the illusion of an echo is just the signal bouncing back and forth between these two inputs. Like it's the delay between the signal coming in here
and coming back out here. Like the echo is actually occurring in this circuitry here, down here. Here's the spring tempered wire I used for the spring upstairs, called music wire. This is the gauge I'm going to use now. It's very tiny. Well, okay, we'll try it. This is such a delicate spring. It's really fun to play with. It's just so light. Because of that, when I stretch it out, it really stretches. So to keep it from sagging, I'm going to have to cut this length. So that's all I'm going to be using. Also, I wanted to show that I encased some magnets in a product called moldable plastic, because some of the magnets I bought didn't have loops on them. You can't drill into them because they're too fragile. So I bought this bag of plastic beads that you boil it, and it becomes moldable, and very quickly it firms up. This is really quite sturdy. I can yank on it all day long.
Also, you saw in the last video I had screw eyes tapped into a magnet. They fell out, so I attached them here. That was
my solution for that. But they're still magnet, obviously. Okay, all right. Just to make sure that my own amplifier wasn't malfunctioning, I've plugged this spring reverb into the spring ray by IntelliGel. So I think you can hear that this is functioning as a transducer, but you can hear it.
Now I broke out my electromagnetic field meter to show how the signals coming from the synthesizer to the input side of the spring reverb, and as soon as it gets near that coil, it just goes bonkers. So that does prove that there's a signal getting through. It's just not twisting that little spring. So the question is it because the magnet's not strong enough, or is it because the coil's not big enough, or they're just not matched? I don't know.
So here's something I rigged up. I just put some piezoelectric wafers on the back of these two metal plates, and I hooked those up to my spring ray there, just to make sure that I'm testing every piece, making sure that the spring actually transmits. So that works. The only thing that's causing the problem with the old system, the system I've been working on, is the magnet that my pinky represents. That magnet needs to be moved by the electromagnetic field, and somehow it's not being moved when it should be. Now, just for the sake of trying everything, I got these really big magnets. Ooh, they're really strong. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. These are strong magnets. And look at that. Did you see that? I'll try it again. Come on, buddy. Get off of there. It's stuck to the back of my... Let's see. Oop, there he goes. This is kind of fun, actually. Hello. Oh, and the wire loves it too. So I experimented with these. Oy, boy, oy. They attract everything. Very strong magnets, very weak magnets.
Finally, I saw a ray of light, literally in this case. I made two coils, one with 2,000 turns and one with 200 turns. The green is a 200 turn. And by placing them perpendicular to the spring, I could make the signal travel from one side to the other. You can see it a little closer here. This is actually displayed in the formula that I showed earlier in the magazine article. It does compensate for a 90-degree angle, and so I'm on the right track. Deadlines notwithstanding, this is probably going to have to be a two-parter anyway, so I'll just leave it there and continue later.
Well, I felt a bit silly going through this whole video without playing any music at all on this, so I just hooked this up to a sequencer, and I'm just going to play some noise through it and maybe play around with the springs, because that's the fun part of it too. I'll bring you closer. found this interesting, and I really hope that you keep your eyes out for the next installment of the video, because I have a feeling that I'm right on the edge of figuring this out. I think the math is the answer. So I'm going to be doing a lot of math, and then you'll see the successful video soon. Thanks for watching.